This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Now, prepare yourselves for a Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels special edition.
Hi, I'm Timothy Zahn, and you're listening to Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels.
Greetings, Scoundrels. This is Dennis, and I have my friend and co-host Darth Taxus with me for this Scoundrels special edition. Taxus, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Can't complain, but I still will at some point.
Absolutely. That wouldn't be a show without that. Mm-hmm. Well, Scoundrels, we are here because this is the bonus features to episode 62, in which we featured our Timothy Zahn's Thrawn's Alliances conversation. And we played a few segments of a book signing panel that Timothy Zahn did that you attended, Darth Taxus.
Yeah. I was actually reminded of this from a friend of ours, Scott Green, and he said, hey, why don't you come to this event? And it's kind of rare to get a Star Wars author here, right, for a book release. So, I jumped at the opportunity to do it. And it was at Interabang Books, which is a nice little bookshop. And I called them and told them that I just wanted to record some audio, and the manager there was really happy about it, and great people to work with, and I'm really looking forward to maybe doing some more with them in the future. And if you,
Interbang is a fun little bookstore down in the kind of, I don't want to say it's North Dallas, but it's just north of downtown more than anything. And it's independent and set in a nice little shopping center. They aren't going to have quite the selection of Barnes & Noble, but it's a much more personable experience when you're there.
Yes.
But anyway, so as I was saying, you recorded the panel, and we played a few choice cuts from that on episode 62 as part of our discussion of Thrawn Alliances. Uh-huh. But we thought for the fun of our listeners, we'd release the entire audio here in this Scoundrel special edition. Yeah. So this kind of, I'll let you describe it, Taxus. What's the setup here?
Well, he was at the front on a small stage, and I guess there were about maybe 150 people there. It was pretty packed, for a smaller room, and everybody, the 501st was there, Rebel Legion. So people were all decked out in their stuff. There were kids. There were some great Thrawn cosplayers. And this was actually the weekend after I dropped my communications device in some water. And somehow, miraculously, my communications device, also called a phone, came back to life just for this last thing to get photos and such and be able to tweet it out and everything. And then afterwards, it's almost like it said, "Master, have I served you well? I die." And it died like immediately after the event was done. It was crazy. So, I don't know, but let's give it a listen.
All right, here it goes.
You're not here to see me. Who are you here to see? Timothy! I'm sorry, was that Timothy?
Mr. Zahn.
Timothy. Okay, well, we got Thrawn and Darth Vader, but hey, there's Timothy. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Welcome out of the heat, everybody. Thank you for cooling the state down just a little bit for my arrival. It was, I think, 75 or so when I left San Diego today. So fortunately, you guys have good air conditioning in the state nowadays. What we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got into Star Wars, since people always want to know that. And then we'll open it up for questions. Then we'll go ahead and sign books if you have books and want to sign, that sort of thing. Back in 1989, I was minding my own business in my office in Illinois, working on my 11th novel, starting to head up towards the level of lead author, which is the promo book every month from the publisher. And I was leaving the mid-list. I was going to be a lead author at some point. And early November of that year, got a phone call from my agent with the understatement, "Tim, we have a very interesting offer here." It seems that for the last few months, not quite sure of the timeline, Lucasfilm and Bantam Books had been discussing the idea of picking up the Star Wars saga after Return of the Jedi, which was an era nobody had been allowed to write in before. The decision had been made. The Bantam editors had been asked to find an author. They picked a few authors, sent samples of our writing out to California. The Lucasfilm people decided they liked my style, and hence the phone call from my agent. We talked about 45 minutes to an hour or so. I told him I'd give my answer the next day, and then I went off and panicked. Because this was a chance to jumpstart my career beyond anything I could ever have imagined. It was also the chance to fall flat on my face in front of millions of Star Wars fans who would never forgive me for what I'd done to their universe. I know you can't imagine that happening among fandom. But even pre-internet, that was always a concern. Moreover, I had never done a trilogy before, a single story in 3 volumes. I'd done connected novels like my Cobras or my Black Collars, but I'd never done a single story in 300,000 words. I wasn't sure I knew how to pace that sort of thing. Well, by the next day I had enough idea. I thought, okay, I can do this, and I would be crazy not to give it a shot. When I had agreed to it, started working on outlines. It took Lucasfilm and Bantam 5 months to do their contract. Lawyers get paid by the hour, you know. And until Bantam and Lucasfilm had a contract, Bantam and I couldn't have a contract, and until I had a contract, Lucasfilm wouldn't look over any outlines of mine. So I plotted in my mind and worked on my other book for those 5 months, and finally we got the word through, got it all started out. And then the question of, does anybody care about Star Wars anymore? Because this was, the book came out in 1991, 83 was the last Star Wars movie, nothing happening that looked like Star Wars fandom, and nobody knew if the fans were just quiet or if they were non-existent. And I suspect part of Lucasfilm's motive, at least in the back of their minds, was if this thing dies on the vine, we know the fans aren't out there and George can skip any ideas of making the movies. Bantam wanted to print 100,000 hardcovers. The orders from the bookstores came back and they printed 70,000. So clearly the bookstore owners weren't impressed either. I do remember lying awake one night, again pre-internet, wondering how many libraries there were in the United States, because each of them bought 2 copies. Could we get, earn out the advance, after a while? So the book hit the streets with 70,000 copies. Those were gone within 2 weeks. Bantam, my editor called and said they were going back for another 60,000. Called back the next day and said, no, we're going to do 2 runs of 30,000 each because we can get them out faster that way. I don't know how many printings they eventually wound up with for the hardcover, but I do know that they were printing hardcovers after the paperback came out, which at that time was unheard of. It happens now on certain books. But at the time, when the paperback comes out, you stop printing hardcovers, you sell them off, and then that's it. By the time Heir to the Empire left the New York Times top 10, Bantam and Lucasfilm had a contract for 12 more books. They had also sensed that there was a massive disturbance in the force who wanted to read Star Wars books. Finished the first 3. I think it was the fall of '92. So I'd finished The Last Command, but it wasn't out yet. And I got a call from Bantam saying, okay, we've got these other 12 books. We would like you to do the last one of the set, kind of bookend this series. And I said, okay, that sounds great. 2 things I want to do if I'm going to do this project. One, I want to end the war with the Empire. It's been going on long enough. You've got to be able to find new stories without that same fight going on. And I want to get Luke and Mara Jade together. And they said, okay, fine on the first, but we'd like to leave Luke and Mara's relationship. I think it was ambiguous or undefined or something is what they said. So I said, okay, well in that case, I'm not interested in doing the project, but thanks for the offer. Went back to my next book on the list. A couple of weeks later, I got a call back. Okay, fine, you can do it. I have no idea what the internal workings of everything was out there on that one. I really ought to talk to the editor someday and find out. So that, those books, Spectre, the Past, Vision of the Future, came out of that one. Later on, they asked if I would like to do, they said we're doing a Han and Leia book called Tatooine Ghost. Would I like to do a Luke and Mara book? So I'd already contracted for Outbound Flight, but that had been put on the shelf until after the second, I think actually after all the Clone Wars movies were out. So I worked out an outline. We figured out that we can make Survivor's Quest and Outbound Flight basically a duology separated by about 50 years, lead into to have Luke and Mara find the remnants of Outbound Flight, and then in the book itself show how it got where they wound up finding it. After that, let's see, we did a couple. I did, let's see, what was the order? I think it was Allegiance, and then Choices of One, and then Scoundrels. At that point, I'm done with Star Wars. Lucasfilm has been bought by Disney, and they are putting everything that's been done now into Legends, which bothered a whole lot of people. My take was that, okay, they're saying we're going to do new movies. Everybody get off the stage while we decide what we're doing. We can invite you back on as there's a place for you. And at that point, okay, apparently I'm done with Star Wars. My agent would occasionally poke Shelley Shapiro and say, Tim's available for a new Star Wars book. And she would come back, yeah, we know. So, 2015, it was September, we were at, I think it was Salt Lake City Comic-Con, and a bunch of us went out to dinner, and among them was Pablo Hidalgo, one of the story group at Lucasfilm. I've known Pablo since his days at West End Games. We've known each other pretty much forever, certainly for my entire Star Wars career. And a couple of us, as authors are wont to do, said, you guys are interested in more Star Wars books, we could, we'd be available. And Paulo said, yeah, I know. Apparently that's a stock answer you're given at Lucasfilm and Bantam or Del Rey at this point and such. So, okay, go on to other matters. A couple of weeks later, I get an odd email from Lucasfilm, somebody at Lucasfilm I didn't know, saying, we'd like you to come down and chat about Star Wars. Chat about Star Wars. Okay, I can chat here too, but you want me to come down there? All right, fine. The way the schedules worked, it wasn't going to be till November. 2 months later, we actually had a slot where all of us could make the time, have a slot to come for the meeting. So we set up this mid-November meeting. I am, of course, poking through the internet and emails, trying to figure out what's going on here. And they weren't telling me, they weren't going to tell me what's going on, but I was getting gleanings of information. Okay, first of all, some of the story group will be there. Dave Filoni will be there. Dave Filoni's blocking out 2 hours for this, which Dave Filoni hasn't got to spare at the time he was knee-deep in Rebels. And, okay, I still don't know what's going on. They're still not going to tell me about it. And I arrived in San Francisco. While I'm waiting for my luggage, I decided to check email one more time and see if they were sending a car. They told me to just get a cab. They had the hotel and everything set up. And one final email. Oh, by the way, they're meeting tomorrow. There may be a film crew. Is that a problem? Film crew? No, it's not a problem. What the heck is going on? So I arrived the next day at Lucasfilm. The book editor at Lucasfilm, Jennifer Heddle, took me to lunch in the commissary. I was way too nervous to eat anything. And then they sat me down, she took me to the conference room. We were a few minutes before the meeting time was set, and she left to go off and do other things. So I'm at a table like this, and up here is where all the water and snackage are. So that's got to be the head of the table. So I sit down over at this end, the far base of the thing while I figure out what's going on. Nobody's there yet except the film crew. Film crew is there. They're pointing kind of this direction. So people start dribbling in. It was invariably, hi, I'm so-and-so, big fan. So after about the third of these, okay, I'm not in trouble. Not in trouble, that's always good. Pablo comes in, Leland Shee, who I've known almost as long as Pablo. Leland Shee, before Story Group, he was Story Group. He was the one who knew everything about Star Wars and the continuity master, and phenomenal memory. I say hello to them and I ask Leland, do you know what's going on? He says, oh yeah. And I'm thinking, great Leland, someday I'm going to know something you don't, and I'm not going to tell you either. And they say, oh, by the way, come up here, over here, move over here to the head of the table, right by the head here, where the film crew is pointing. Okay. Finally, Carrie Hart and Dave Filoni come in. They sit down at the head of the table, and then they drop the bombshell on me that Thrawn is going to be the major villain in Star Wars Rebels Season 3, bringing back into full canon and presented before millions of people, especially the younger people who've never read any of the books and don't even know about the character yet. I think, I'm not quite sure, but I think I said something like, the internet's going to melt. So they took me down to the Rebels area. They showed me a little film clip of his arrival into his first scene in Rebels, coming onto the Star Destroyer bridge with Governor Price. I got a little tour of the bullpen, seeing all of the stuff that they were working on in Rebels and such. And then four of us went upstairs and we discussed the book they wanted me to write, which was Thrawn. His backstory, his rise to power, and the parallel rise to power of Governor Price, who was also being seen for the first time in Season 3. She'd been mentioned and never seen before. So went off, started work on, actually, that's the next, that was Friday. The Monday after that, I flew down from San Francisco to Southern California and talked to Blizzard about the StarCraft novel they wanted me to write. So this was sort of okay, I've got now two books with pretty hard deadlines on them to go. So, told my wife and son, of course, they're kind of my brain trust, idea bounce backboards and such. And then we realized we were going to have to sit on this thing for 8 months, because at this point I've signed 2 non-disclosure agreements. The first one talks about your firstborn child. The second one mentions your dominant kidney. So I learned how to, we learned how to tap dance around questions. So we were not, I did not want to lie to people, though if I had to, I would have, because non-disclosure agreements. But I was very good at evading the question. So I got very good at that. Then Celebration London, where they dropped the bomb to the rest of the world about Thrawn being, I don't know how many of you have seen that the panel, we were streaming it, where Dave Filoni reveals everything. Dave Filoni is a character, if you haven't figured this out. I don't know how many of you would even have spotted it at the time, because we knew what was coming. We spotted it, but as he says, okay, we're going to do this, let's show the promo, and let's expand our universe a little. So, yeah, expand our universe. Cute Dave. So, Thrawn comes out, the big hit, Star Wars Rebels, brings him into Season 4 as well. Meanwhile, we were talking about a new book, Thrawn Alliances. I had done what all authors do if they want steady work. I put a hook into Thrawn that I can pitch as another book, namely Thrawn mentioning he had met Anakin Skywalker. So that was the story I wanted to write. The powers that be at Del Rey and Lucasfilm really wanted me to write a Thrawn Vader novel. So we compromised and did both. So what this book is 2 parallel stories. One, Vader and Thrawn going out on a mission, and the other one about 15, 20 years in the past of Thrawn and Anakin and Padme doing a little something on their own at the near the end of the Clone Wars. So, inevitable question, do I have anything more planned for Thrawn in books? Answer, I would love to, but we're being held up at the moment by Lucasfilm. We don't know what is being planned for the era I want to write in, whether Dave Filoni's doing something, whether Episode 9 might reference something in the period that would destroy what I'm planning to do. I'm hoping I will get a meeting with Dave Filoni sometime in the next couple of months, and we can sit down and hammer out some things. I don't know if he's got ideas or if he's just, I don't want to give this spot up yet while he does other projects. But as you know, Filoni is very, very busy with everything else. So hopefully sometime in the next couple of months we can make some kind of a deal for new books. Until then, we're just kind of hanging fire and waiting for them to come up with their plans so we can come up with ours. So let's go ahead and open up to questions. In the back.
Well, I've read a lot of Star Wars books, and yours are head and shoulders above everybody's.
Thank you.
Hands down, you're the best. But what book is your favorite that you haven't read?
What book is my favorite? You're asking who my favorite child is. It's really hard to answer a question like that. I like a lot of my standalones. I think the Icarus Hunt is probably my favorite. But I like the series, the Star Wars, the 12 Star Wars books, which I think of as kind of a complete series, even though many of them essentially stand alone. The Quadrille series, I really enjoy doing the 6 Dragonback books. So it's really hard to pick one of them. When people say what is your favorite when they're at a sales table at a convention, my next question is, what do you like? Because some of these things might not appeal to you more than others would. So if I had to pick a single book, I would probably say Icarus Hunt. But I like them all. I'm not. Authors sometimes are ashamed of things. Oh, I wish I'd never written that, or I'd love to buy up all the copies and burn them, or something like that. All of the books I've done have been the best I could do at the time, and I am, proud of what I did. I have no regrets. Nothing. Gee, I wish I'd done that entirely differently. Anything of that sort.
So when you finally had the chance of going back to writing Thrawn, did you decide that you would write the same characters that we saw in your original book trilogy, or do you say, you know what, maybe that's the occasion to make him a little bit different, even if it doesn't quite connect with what's now in Legend?
Yeah, the question was, I'm going to repeat questions because I'm sure a lot of you in the back can't hear it. The question was, did I decide to write the same character, Thrawn, in the new books as I'd done in the old one, or did I tweak them to fit new canon? As far as I'm concerned, it's the same character. It's just in a different part of the timeline, different situation. In the Thrawn trilogy, he is the one in command. In Thrawn and Thrawn Alliances, he is still having to prove himself, and he's working within a military and political structure that he is not controlling. So it's a different sort of challenge for him. You see certain, perhaps blind spots or deficits, particularly in political matters, that you didn't necessarily see in the Thrawn trilogy. But as far as I'm concerned, if they made everything else I'd done canon tomorrow, there'd be no spackling needed. It would all fit perfectly well together. I should probably get one of the bookstore people that are pointing fingers, but I don't have to do that.
Clint from Michigan is asking, would you be interested in writing a book about the Knights of Ren?
Since we have no idea what the Knights of Ren really are, I mean, if I was given carte blanche on that, I'm sure I could come up with something interesting. I mean, there really is not much in Star Wars that I couldn't find a good story to tell. The one exception is if they asked me to do the heroic journey of Jar Jar Binks, I would probably turn that one down. But Knights of Ren, if they gave me some indication what this group is and it sounded interesting, I'd certainly be open to it.
What do you think was the driving force for the return of Thrawn in the new Disney acquisition era?
The driving force behind Thrawn's reemergence into
Yes.
canon, from what I understand, Carrie Hart is the one who really pushed it, with Dave Filoni a close second. They were the ones who pitched the idea to the higher-ups at Lucasfilm. Dave had always thought, I guess they'd been thinking about Thrawn for a long time, and Season 3 was the logical in-universe time to bring him in. The Rebels are not just a minor nuisance now, they're starting to grow in this area. As Price says, they need someone who sees the bigger picture, time to bring in the bigger gun. Thrawn would be a logical choice to do that. So I think it was Carrie Hart who wanted to bring him in, and the Rebels team pushed for it. They got approval, and that's where it came. You have to remember that these people, a lot of the story group people and mid-level people and even higher ups at Lucasfilm and Disney grew up with these books 25 years ago. So it's part of their Star Wars experience. So they are looking at this as part of their life, and to be able to share it with now they've got the authority to be able to share it with other people. They're looking on it fondly.
Sit down. Oh, yeah, that's me. Can you talk a little bit about Batu and how that was developed, especially with the upcoming theme park? How much was your influence? How much you were given? How much that dictated the story?
I'm not sure how they go on and off about whether to be touchy about mentioning Batu or not, Galaxy's Edge. I had nothing to do with the Imagineering or the park thing. What they did do was feed me some of the sketches and the concept art and a little bit of description of things that are going on in there, so I could put them into the book. But it was all one-way direction. Same with Rebels. I did not have any influence or input into seasons 3 or 4 of Rebels. But what they did do is send me scripts so I could see what they were doing and be able to mold the books to meld into and fit into what they had already or in progress. So the information is flowing one direction on all of this stuff.
Sir, second round of the...
Were you pleased on the way they explained Thrawn's disappearance?
Pleased at the way they explained Thrawn's disappearance. I was told he would survive Rebel Season 4. I was not told anything about how that was going to work. I will tell you that after the initial shock of all that, of how this worked, my initial thought was, candy store. Because there are so many possible things to go from that direction. And again, if Dave Filoni has some ideas, he will have a top crack at it. But if he decides he's too busy, or if I can pitch some ideas and he's okay with them, or we modify them together, there's some really cool stuff I would love to do with that. So yeah, there are some very good possibilities. I'm hoping we can exploit some of them in the future.
In the back, sir? Yeah.
Thanks for being here. I've always been curious, after Survivor's Quest, if Disney had bought Lucasfilm, what would you have done, or what direction would you have taken all that?
Sorry, say again?
After Survivor's Quest, it seemed like there were some hooks in there. If Disney had bought Lucasfilm, if they'd gotten to continue after Survivor's Quest in the books, where would you have wanted to take the story?
Well, they did, after Survivor's Quest, of course, they went, the first thing was the Yuuzhan Vong War, and then they went with Legacy of the Force and the various of the 9-book series and such. Mike Stackpole and I had actually come up with a couple of ideas to pitch to them that would pick up after, basically in the era of the Yuuzhan Vong War. About that time, Bantam lost the license to Del Rey, and they went their own direction with it. It would have been similar, but not quite what they had done. So that was as far ahead as I had thought to do, nothing past that alien threat we would have to combine to fight.
I think there was
If you were to cast Thrawn in a live-action film, do you have anybody in mind who you would like to see in that role?
Question was, who would I cast as Thrawn? The problem is with that question, I always have a problem with, because I don't see my characters in terms of face or even voice. I see them generally as personality and attitude. So I could tell you what Thrawn would do in any given situation, but actually casting someone, if the actor can capture that presence, that, to use an overworked word, gravitas, the presence and just awareness the character has, I think any competent actor could pull that off. That being said, the three names I've heard most often are Benedict Cumberbatch, who might be a little young, but not necessarily. Jason Isaacs could be a good job. Since Lars Mikkelsen has done the voice, that would be an obvious one. And I kind of favor Jeremy Irons. So, any of you casting for a Lucasfilm movie, learning about, take notes.
Really more of a comment than a question. Just wanted to offer a huge thank you to you. Survivor's Quest 2004? Came out in 2004? Mr. Zahn put the 501st Legion in that story, and that made our club canon in the Star Wars universe. So, thank you, sir.
Actually, interesting story behind that. I first met the 501st several years earlier. I don't remember exactly when. It was a North Carolina convention, and a friend we knew, Sherilyn Lambeth, asked if we would mind having a 501st escort for my panels, and she assured me, no, they're not weirdos. Anyway, we arrived at the convention, met some of them, nice guys and gals. There was a Klingon contingent at that convention. Saturday, the Klingons suddenly seemed to be walking around prominently holding can openers. Okay, I thought, that's a challenge down. Let's see what the 501st does. Within an hour, all the stormtroopers were wearing lobster bibs. So I thought, okay, this is a group I could hang out with. So when I got to Survivor's Quest, I wanted a stormtrooper contingent, and I pitched the idea through Bantam to, no, that was Del Rey at that point, I think, whoever it was, Del Rey to Lucasfilm, and I had a list of 8 or 9 reasons why we should use the 501st. They do good charity work, they're very good costumers, they're nice people, etc. The answer, the note came back from Lucasfilm. This is the costuming charity group. Yes. Okay, great. No argument needed. Fine, put them in. So I was very pleased to be able to do that, because these people do wonderful work, and I'm always impressed and always gratified, not just because they show up at events like this, but they do children's hospitals, they do fundraising and such, and they are marvelous people. And the Rubber team as well, Mandalorian Works, and the R2 Droid Builders, the whole community is just fabulous, and I really am glad I'm associated with it.
Actually, already asked a question. I'll move on. In the back, yes, sir?
Hi. So you said that Dave Filoni told you Thrawn was coming back as opposed to being asked, and that you also didn't really know the ending to Rebels. So I'm curious what level of creative input you had to maybe some of the Thrawn items. Like, were you asked, like, we're thinking of having Thrawn do this, or were you more like told, hey, here's what Thrawn's going to be doing?
It's the latter one. They already were well into production before they were allowed to tell me about it. Animated series in particular have a long lead time. So I did not really give any input into what they were doing except to tell them I approved of it. There were a couple of things in the scripts that I had to look at and think, okay, is that really correctly Thrawn? And yes, if I think about it a little bit, I can make a case for that. So, yeah, I've offered, I've offered assistance and input varying number of times, and I've never been taken up on it. I don't know if that's because they don't think novelists know how to work in other media, which to a large extent is probably true, or whether it's simply that they can't bring me on without anything official. I can't really give suggestions or that without them giving me dental and health. I don't know the machinations of the corporations like Lucasfilm, but they know where to find me if they ever want some advice or thoughts or whatever.
Yes, sir. If Lucasfilm called you tomorrow and said, hey, we want a book on one of the sequel trilogy characters, we'll give you your first pick. Which character would you write?
Should I say it one more time?
If you could write a novel on any one of the sequel trilogy characters, right?
Questions of the sequel trilogy, which character would I be interested in writing? I don't know. I mean, the problem is they are not completely fleshed out, and we're not going to know the full story until episode 9. Again, I could do any of them if they offered me one, depending on how much backstory they'd given or whether they wanted me to create a backstory. Phasma's already been taken, of course, and there are Ray and I think Poe and Finn books out there. Some of them young adult, but still there are books filling in a lot of that. The trouble is that as soon as you start adding books about characters, you start filling in all of the interesting stuff, and then it's hard to find something interesting new to do with them. So I can't really answer that one. I don't know. It would depend on a lot of circumstances. It would all be speculation at this point.
Imperial Officer? Yes, kind of piggybacking off a question she asked in the very beginning. Do you have any particularly favorite authors or books that you've read within the Star Wars universe? Anything that maybe influenced you or inspired you in your own novels later on?
The question was other Star Wars books I've read. I really have only read a couple of them. I just I haven't had time to keep up with everything. Another reason not to read them is because I don't want to be influenced or find myself duplicating what somebody else has done. And the other one, and don't tell anybody, but I'm sure you know there are a couple of bad books out there. You will not all agree on which the bad books are, of course, but everybody agrees there are a couple of stinkers in any group. And it's just simpler to say I've not read that book rather than say I really hated its guts. So for many reasons, I just have not kept up with everything. We've got the story group to keep up with any continuity things that I might need for future books.
Concerning era, if you were given the chance to write, say, during the Clone Wars era, would you take Lucasfilm or whoever is directing that up on that chance?
If I was offered to write in the Clone Wars era, would I do it? Well, this half of Thrawn Alliances is set in the Clone Wars era, albeit way off on the edge. Again, the problem with Clone Wars is that between the prequel movies and the Clone Wars TV series, a lot of that ground, the interesting ground, has already been covered. So I would have to find something new to say or some new twist on a storyline. I'm sure I could do it. The question is whether it would be worth the effort to everybody else, whether the readers really want lots more Clone Wars stories in book form. Obviously, Dave is bringing 10 or 12 more to close off the series, and everybody's enthusiastic about that, including me. But whether people want more Clone Wars in books would be another question. The other question I'm asked a lot is the Old Republic era, the Knights of the Old Republic. I'm hoping to be able to work with BioWare on a game module or something in that, and might be able to get another book out in that era. At the moment, though, Thrawn is what's popular, and we want to keep the momentum going with him.
With the return of Clone Wars, do you think we'll get to see Thrawn in the TV show at all?
I have no idea whether they would bring him in to Thrawn. The question is Thrawn in the new Clone Wars episodes. I have no idea if Dave would want to bring him in there. I mean, you could do it. Again, I've got Thrawn coming into the edge of the Republic in Thrawn Alliances, so it would be doable. The question is whether Dave would want to do that. I assume what he's doing is, since that series got cut short, he's mostly filling in the ending of what he wanted to do, and I doubt Thrawn was a part of that. But, things change all the time, and Dave is the one person I know will do a good job with Thrawn, because he's already proved he and his team can do that. So we'll just all have to wait and see. Again, nobody tells me anything. There are a lot of bloggers who get more information than I do. Authors are, we're like mushrooms. We're kept in the dark and fed manure, as they say. So I really don't know much of anything. It's not that I'm being coy. I really don't know.
Gentleman in the back in black.
In the spirit of this book, what other character would you like Thrawn to tag team with?
Who else would I like Thrawn to tag team with? Well, the obvious one is Mara Jade. There are other interesting people. I like Yularen, and of course Tarkin would be possible, but the dynamic between those two and Thrawn would be very similar to Vader and Thrawn, and I'd want to try to find something new to do. I'm sure we could find some characters if they want another tag team set up over at Lucasfilm. Again, continuing work is the author's goal.
Writing process. You get this new project, you start outlining, do you research? What do you start with?
The writing process. What I usually do is start with an outline, start working out the story, working out the beginning, the end, some of the middle details. The characters start out as cardboard cutouts, essentially. Okay, this is the villain, this is the hero sidekick, whatever. And as the story develops, the characters flesh out. And there is a feedback system in place. If I come up with a very cool plot twist that requires one of my characters have a particular trait or ability, that gets added to the character. If I come up with an interesting character trait that'll affect the plot, that affects the storyline. So by the time I'm finished, I know I'm going from Dallas to Chicago. I don't know exactly the route, because that's going to change as I work through the book and I come up with better ideas of how to get past Oklahoma City than I started out with in the outline, or through Oklahoma City. Nothing against Oklahoma City, but I know I'm heading to Chicago, and all the characters and their character arcs are heading in the direction I started with. So I don't do 5 or 6 drafts. I try to keep it pretty much with one, with editing tweakings and such. And I'm not one of those who just takes off to see where I'm going to go, and I might wind up in Chicago, I might wind up in Cleveland, who knows. I know I'm heading to Chicago with this book. So once I got the outline, I write chronologically. I don't write chapters 1, 2, and 3 and then skip to 8 or 9 because they're more interesting. I want to do it straight through. Edit as I go. Start out each day's work with reading what I did the day before, a little polishing, get momentum into the day's work. At the very end, I'll go back, read it through again, make sure all my plot setups are used and set up properly and all that. Ship it off to the editor. The editor will make changes. The copy editor will have queries and spot things. The proofreader will spot things. So I have a couple, 3 more times to read through it and do any final polishing before it finally goes off to the printer. And then you get it, and I'm 2 or 3 books past that point by that time. So the fun part, of course, is somebody who's just read one of my books I wrote 10 years ago, and I don't remember details. Somebody came up to me a while back and asked, "What is a Tarshmaxer?" I haven't the foggiest idea. Can you use it in a sentence? He said, well, it's in Outbound Flight. Anakin orders a Tarsh Maxer. Oh, okay. The Tarsh is a sandwich. Maxer means he's supersizing it because he's a teenager. But I had no idea it was a throwaway term, and I had no idea until he jogged my memory. Oh, that's what that is. So be patient with me if you've got old school questions later on.
Very far back. Yes, sir. Is there any title significance from releasing back in 2007 that book now?
Between allegiance and alliances, no, not really.
Reading from Choices of One, you had Thrawn and Vader kind of have a little get-together where Vader came in and they went against Lord Nuso Espa. I'm just kind of curious, do you plan on doing anything with Nuso Espa?
Nuso Espa, again, they're not doing any more Legends books, but there would be a chance if I had a good reason to bring Nuso Espa in later on. Anything I try to bring into a new book, and hence into canon, has to undergo the scrutiny of the story group, and justly so. In Thrawn, I got to bring in Admiral Arlani and Hisishi the Togorian, and of course Captain Park. Dave Filoni gave us a last minute gift by mentioning Pelion at the end of Star Wars Rebel Season 4. I cannot control what story group will or will not let me do. However, I will say that if I find a place for, say Talon Card or Mara Jade or Nuso Espa, where it fits into the story I want to tell, I will pitch it to them. At that point, it's up to them to decide whether they want to let me or not.
You said earlier, as far as an actor playing Thrawn, they would have to capture his gravitas. Did you feel like the show did that, or even the price, or they asked for your input? Did you change anything about the portrayal?
Would I have asked for any change in the portrayal of Thrawn in Rebels? Not really. I liked what they did. They understood the character, knew how to write for him. The voice actor was genius, bringing Lars Mikkelsen, because as a Dane, English is not his first language. So while he doesn't have an accent per se, his pacing is just enough off that it feels like it's not his first language, which of course it isn't, and it's not Thrawn's either. And he has just that calm, menacing, Thrawn, Vader is menacing, Thrawn is calm and menacing, which is in some ways a scarier combination. But yeah, Mikkelsen captured it. The writers doing the scripts and dialogue and monologues captured him perfectly. I point out to people, Thrawn will never say, "You rebel scum." What he would be saying is, "I understand you. I respect you, but you are my enemy and I will destroy you." In about that tone of voice, but more menacing. So yeah, no, the Rebels team did an absolutely bang-up job. I'm very pleased with what they did.
If you could bring back a species, or like the Salamiri, or a planet from the expanded universe, what would it be?
What would I bring back from expanded universe, either a planet or a species or something? Salamiri have some interesting possible uses. George apparently never liked them. And it would be a hard sell to Filoni or anybody else at Lucasfilm. I think I could do it. Because their understanding of how a Salamiri work violates what they think how they think the Force works. I think I can make it compatible. But at the moment they're a bigger fish to fry, than bringing a Salamiri back. I got Togorians. I like them, especially Hisishi. Planets. a lot of ones I visited in the books that would be interesting to go back to, but half the fun of Star Wars is making your own, a new one with new characteristics, especially since I don't have to go to ILM with a budget. You know, I can just write it in. So nothing springs to mind.
So how do you come up with the names for like your characters, the alien species, planets? How do you come up with the characters' names?
How do I come up with characters' names?
For species or planets?
Or species, planets, whatever. Major characters, I want to have a good flow for the sound of the name. Distinctive visually, because at least when I started writing Star Wars, most of the reading was done visually as opposed to audiobooks and such. So Mara Jade is very distinctive. It flows well. Thrawn has a hard edge to it. Talon Card, with the name like that, you know he's got to have lots of puns in the back of his brain. For other things, throwaway names or such, I've got a whole bunch of baby name books. Planet names and languages, I've got a bunch of foreign dictionaries that are very helpful. The words, Thrawn's words, the language, what is it, Shinu? I don't remember what they named the thing, but in the book Thrawn, there are various of his words. Maybe that's a Saibisti words. Saibisti is taken from Zulu. I find the word that I want him to say, pull out the Zulu word, and then shift all the vowels. So it's not exactly Zulu, but it has the flow of like a real language would. So that kind of thing can be done. Finnish is another non-Indo-European language. It's handy for that sort of thing. But a lot of language manipulation and such, foreign words, and just baby name books for the minor characters, especially walk-on characters.
Yes, sir. So you obviously created some very iconic characters by now, Thrawn, Mara Jade, even Talon Card, you said, and a bunch of others. Do you have a feeling when you're writing the book that a particular character might take off? Because, for example, Jorus C'baoth, I don't think I've ever seen somebody dressing up as him, and he was one of the main villains of your trilogy, but got overshadowed by Thrawn. Do you have any idea? Would you have a feel for that?
The question is, do I have a feeling about certain characters? Yeah, this is one's going to be popular. There's no way of knowing. It is a lightning in a bottle sort of thing. I do the best I can. I make the most memorable characters I can create, but some grab the public attention and others don't. And I don't think there's no science to it. It's just art and just how the chemistry happens to work. I'm astonished, always astonished, that people like Thrawn and Mara did so well, because I don't know how to capture that lightning. I just happened to do it twice in the same book, which is very phenomenal for me. So no, I don't have a feeling. My goal is to do the best story I can with the best characters I can, and at that point it's up to you guys.
Last question, sir?
Yes, you just said you were astonished at how well some of your characters did. Who was your favorite character? Who were you really hoping?
Who would I hope to have made an impression? Again, it's my two favorite to write are obviously Thrawn and Mara Jade. They're both very good tacticians, but very different in their approaches. Thrawn is a big picture, fleet tactic sort of thing. Mara is a one-on-one, boots on the ground type of thing. So I enjoy writing tactics. I enjoy writing strategy. That means I enjoy writing people who do that sort of thing well. So whether it's Mara or Thrawn or some of the characters in my other books, those are the people I like to focus on, because those are the ones who are outthinking, outfighting, outsmarting the enemy. And I think that's a kind of story that people like to read, and that's what I like to write, so it works out well.
Fantastic. Okay.
We may be able to have quick questions as I'm signing, but they have to be faster at things. Okay?
So thank you so much.
So before we stand up and
Before we go, Taxus, where can everyone find you on the internet?
Well, at Darth Taxus, and I'm also skulking about with the Geek Supreme. And we should be coming back after Labor Day with that episode of that show. So
very soon.
Yes, very soon.
Right. Make sure you look out for the latest from Jay Krebs on Coffee with Kenobi on both her blog and her Core Worlds Couture column. She's had quite a few reviews lately. As for me, you can find my comic reviews on RetroZap. As I was on vacation for a couple of weeks, I'm a little bit behind, but those are starting to trickle out a little bit. I'm also on Jedi Journals each month, talking a recent Star Wars comic with Jovial J. Shepard. We recently just recorded our conversation about the Mutinium Mancala story arc from the Star Wars title, so look for that in early September. If you want to find us on social media, we are at SQPod on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook at facebook.com/SQPod. You can email us at sqpod@retrozap.com. You can follow Darth Taxus on Twitter at Darth Taxus. Jay is at Joyce Krebs, and I am at DJKVER2. Speaking of RetroZap, we are a proud part of the retrozap.com podcast network. The network currently features 20 shows. Subscribe to the network feed and you can get them all. That's going to do it for this Scoundrel Special Edition. We'll talk to you soon with another edition of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Until then, may the Force be with you.